Welcome to the digital iCan networking event. We obviously had to cancel the event back in March because of coronavirus. So this is our iCan presentation that we've just had to record on video to send to you. So the first thing that I want to look at is the value base of iCan. So there's 5 main values that we're working from. The first one of those values is voluntary participation. This is a core youth work value, and the idea behind voluntary participation is that the relationship that we're trying to build with the young person in this work is based on the young person volunteering to participate in that relationship and choosing into and opting into the work that we're offering for them to do. Most of the professional relationships in the young person's life are not based on the young person choosing to have that profession in their life, whether it's teachers or police or medical staff or social workers. So that's one of the core values of iCan, of youth work, is that the work that we're offering for them is based on their choice and their decision, and that's ultimately a way of empowering them and putting the power in their court. The second value base for iCan is that the work is needs-led. So what that means is that we aren't driven by a curriculum. Instead, the work is tailored to the individual needs of the young person that we're working with. The third value is that it's strengths-based or resilience-based. This means that we're not looking to get the young person from a -5 to a 0. We're actually looking to get them into the plus. It's not just about identifying the problems and the weaknesses and the difficulties. It's about also identifying the strengths in that young person's life. What is already helping them to cope? What is already helping them to thrive? How can we identify those strengths, and how can we build upon those strengths and encourage those strengths in that young person's life to increase their sense of resilience and to increase their ability to cope with whatever it is that life might throw at them. The fourth value is that we work in a holistic way. So we don't isolate any part of the young person's life. We look at the bigger picture, both in terms of everything that's going on for that young person and also the different systems that they're a part of. So education, their family life, the wider community. The work that we're trying to do is taking all of that into account, looking for potential opportunities within that wider network, trying to locate the difficulties that they're having, whether that's in education or in their emotional life or in their relationships, and what relationships, and how we can support them in a more holistic way, not isolating our work to one area of their life, but instead really taking the whole picture into account. And the fifth value, and this is what I want to spend a little bit of time on now, is that we work in a trauma-informed way. So what does that really mean? What does trauma-informed work look like? So the first thing to look at, which hopefully will come up on the screen, if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then this is based on that idea of how you work with a young person who has experienced trauma. So this is about meeting the therapeutic needs of traumatized children. And the most fundamental thing when working with a child who has been traumatized at the base level, before they can do anything else, they need to feel safe. That is the first fundamental thing. They need to feel safe physically and emotionally. So going back to that value of being holistic in iCan, if a young person we just feel isn't feeling safe physically or emotionally, then you can't do any further work with them. The work has to be based around how can you create a sense of safety for this young person. Once that has taken place, the next level up is developing relationships. You can't develop a relationship with a young person if they don't feel safe. That they need that fundamental thing, and then they can start developing relationships. When they've then started to be able to develop relationships, then we can move on to comfort and co-regulation. So this is eliciting care from relationships, and that is obviously a big part of the iCan program is that we want them to be able to get resources from us as a youth worker, that they can learn emotional regulation tools from us. Comfort and co-regulation, after they've got some sense of being able to do that, then they can start to reflect and be empathetic, and that's about managing their behaviour in relation to others. Until they've got those three things, feeling safe, developing relationships, comfort and co-regulation, they will not be able to be empathetic and reflective. They need that foundation in order to do that work. And then once those things are there, and obviously none of these are going to be at the perfect level, but once they've got some level of those four things, then they can move on to developing resilience and resources, self-esteem and identity. If someone doesn't feel safe, if they haven't developed relationships, if they're not able to elicit care from their relationships, and if they're not able to do that work of empathy and reflection, then it's going to be really hard work to build their resilience and resources and self-esteem and identity. That really rests on all those others. And the last thing that you would do that needs all of that beneath it would be to explore trauma and mourn loss. I think often what people think when someone's experienced something difficult and traumatic is that you need to talk about that traumatic experience. And actually that isn't the case, and that runs the risk of re-traumatizing the person that you're working with. And what's really important is that you're actually building all that foundational work before you may start to approach the topic of the trauma that young person has experienced. Okay, so that's a really useful model for working with young people with who have experienced trauma. The next model I want to explore, so the window of tolerance. So that middle level is called the window of tolerance, and this is the emotional state when you are able to think and feel simultaneously. It's where you will be calm, able to have a conversation, able to reflect. The chemicals that are going around your brain when you're in the window of tolerance are chemicals like GABA, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. So this is really where we want our young people to be when we're working with them, when we're having a conversation with them. Trauma really reduces your window of tolerance so that you can be living almost continually in a state of fight or flight. That's what trauma can do, particularly trauma that comes from domestic abuse, which is complex trauma. It's continual, it's daily. You can be in a heightened state continually, so you aren't able to think and feel simultaneously. And when you are triggered and sent out of your window of tolerance, you can go up into your sympathetic nervous system. So this is your fight or flight response, and the chemicals responsible for this response are adrenaline and cortisol. And this looks like anger and rage and panic and stress. That's what the when you're hyper aroused, that's what it looks like. This is where anxiety and panic attacks and rage are located. And in this state, you are feeling too much. So in your window of tolerance, you're thinking and feeling. When you're out of your window of tolerance, you're feeling too much. And what can happen with your trauma response is there's also a state of freeze. This is when you go into hypoarousal. And in this state, you're neither thinking or feeling. The chemical responsible for this is acetylcholine. And in terms of your nervous system, both the window of tolerance and the hypoarousal, so your freeze response, is located in your parasympathetic nervous system. But the window of tolerance is operating through your myelinated vagus nerve. So myelinated means there's myelin on the sheath of the vagus nerve, and it means that the messages going through there travel significantly faster. I think it's around 30 times faster going down the myelinated vagus nerve. But in your freeze response, your hypoarousal, it's going down an unmyelinated vagus nerve, and it's so about 30 times slower. So both in your parasympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response is the sympathetic nervous system. Okay, and the reason this model is so helpful is that the young people can understand how they're responding the way they're responding and why they're responding the way they're responding. And then we can talk about the work of bringing them back into their window of tolerance. What helps them to be in their window of tolerance? What resources do they currently have to get themselves into a state of being calm and able to think and feel at the same time? And also we can have a bit of a conversation about what are the triggers that send them out of their window of tolerance. So it's a really helpful way of having the conversations based in something which is just really understandable for the young people, and it helps them to grow that sense of self-awareness in terms of when they're feeling too much or when they're not thinking or feeling, and also when they are in that state of the window of tolerance, and that's the best place for them to be. So that's a really useful model for understanding the young people that we're working with, and for helping them to understand themselves and to talk about resourcing them and building resilience and doing emotional regulation tools with them. And really being trauma informed, what that means is that we can move from asking the question, what's wrong with you, to asking the question, what has happened to you. It means we can move from a relationship of having power over them to trying to build a relationship of power with them. So instead of people make bad choices, instead it's that people who feel unsafe do unsafe things. And being not trauma informed means you view their behaviour as a problem. But being trauma informed means you view their behaviour as a solution, meaning that their behaviour is directly linked to a way that they experienced threat in their life. And instead of blaming them and shaming them, we can respect them. Thanks for watching. That is the iCan part of the presentation that we wanted to do in March. Rob's going to do a bit more specifically about iCan reporting, and I'm going to include some links to some videos we were hoping to show at the iCan event in March as well. But that's all from me for now. So thank you very much. Cheers for watching. Bye.